Councilman Joe Borelli says the Sandy had.
Right now, we're seeing the biggest rainfall in an hour or two that we've ever seen since we've recorded this.
Flash flood warnings are up from southern New Jersey to Boston's harbor. Much of southern Louisiana was devastated by what was Hurricane Ida, but Governor John Bel Edwards says help is on the way.
We've got the entirety of the National Guard, and we have people coming in from out of state, from other National Guards, and we're going to end up with over 10,000 soldiers on the ground. We have law enforcement officers. Obviously, everybody in Louisiana is mobilized, but we've got them coming, state troopers and sheriff's deputies coming from out of state.
At least 7 people were killed by the storm, including a person who drowned in Passaic, New Jersey, when their car was submerged by floodwaters. The National Hurricane Center says Tropical Storm Larry will probably become a hurricane within hours and could reach Category 3 strength by late Friday. It is still well out in the Atlantic. A new law that bans most abortions in Texas can continue to be enforced for now. The U.S. Supreme Court, in a 5-4 ruling late Wednesday night, declining to block the law that just went into effect. They did not decide the merits of the lawsuit filed by abortion rights activists, so the court challenge will continue. America is listening to Fox News.
Here at Guam Auto Spot, we have the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars, like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage, as low as $127 per paycheck, 0 down. Or this 2021 Buick Encore, as low as $237 per paycheck, 0 down for 72 months. Call 478-AUTO to schedule a test drive or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com.
There's a new variant of the coronavirus, which health researchers warn could be harder to fight.
The World Health Organization says the Mu variant of COVID shows signs of being resistant to vaccines, and so far it's turned up in 39 countries across the world. A WHO report said the Mu variant has, quote, potential properties of immune escape. Meanwhile, the Delta variant's taking its toll, driving up COVID cases and filling U.S. hospitals. Johns Hopkins says the U.S. has seen nearly 40 million COVID cases so far. Jill Nato, Fox News.
Moderna has asked the Food and Drug Administration to approve a booster shot for its coronavirus vaccine, saying tests show it boosts antibody response to the Delta variant. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin says he's proud of the job done by the U.S. military personnel to evacuate thousands of people from Afghanistan after the Taliban's takeover, but others remain stranded.
2 days after troops left Afghanistan, it's still unclear if any more Americans or Afghans left behind have made it out. A key hurdle, getting the Kabul airport operational again. But among those awaiting safe passage, journalists funded by the U.S. government reportedly turned away from the gates by American troops. Preventing their rescue, senior State Department officials tell Fox communications that were supposed to prioritize certain groups went viral. As the Taliban's promise of free passage is put to the test, President Biden met with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, who, like the former Afghan president, is desperate for economic and military aid in Ukraine's fight against Russia.
Fox's Jackie Heinrich. Attorneys for 2 former Minneapolis police officers charged in George Floyd's death are now asking a judge to bar their upcoming trial from being live streamed, saying some witnesses won't testify if the proceedings are broadcast. The trial is scheduled to begin in March. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
As we end pandemic unemployment assistance, or PUA, on September 4th, the Guam Department of Labor is still committed to assisting you with your employment and unemployment needs. Call 311 to book an appointment for help with claim issues, appeals, and overpayments. For new applications, the deadline to apply is October 4th. Are you still trying to get back on your feet? Let GDOL and the American Job Center assist you by calling 475-7000 or 7001. Visit dol.guam.gov for more information.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team. conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Leah Dunca from Security Title here with a little information about trusts. A trust is a legal entity capable of owning property. It can protect property from issues such as lawsuits or divorce and can be used to distribute property and avoid probate. Many trusts start as revocable but become irrevocable when the initial trustees die. Work with your estate planning attorney to see if a trust is a good fit for your family property. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's the way we start this. That's the way I start this show every day, Monday through Friday, every day of the week, except Saturday and Sunday, which we abhor, but we still got 2 whole days left, Jose, so we can still be optimistic. Friday's a tough one for Jose and I because we know that we got to go 70 hours without Tall Tales. So I made a promise here about a week ago that I was going to read the rules of engagement on the first day of every month. And I forgot yesterday, which was the 1st of September. But this is the rules of engagement for Tall Tales. These are sort of the principles that I try to stick to as we plow through the various issues here, both local and national, and even worldwide. Listen to the radio talkers, read blogs and blog comments in the papers, check out the conversations in the bars and coffee shops, and it soon becomes apparent that answers are often more abundant than questions concerning the important issues of the day. One of the functions of Tall Tales will be to state the questions for the answers that many seem so sure of, and then respond to those questions. Here are some of the answers that will be dealt with in the coming weeks, not necessarily in the order of their occurrence or importance. And I have a list of 24, default topics. Number 1, you can carry any gun anywhere at any time. Number 2, we are second-class citizens. Number 3, there should be term limits for senators. Number 4, the Fed stole the Fenajam from us. Number 5, the job of the Civil Service Commission is to protect employees. Number 6, only Chamorros are going to vote on Guam's political status. Number 7, Guam should be decolonized. Now, I've got 24 of these, and I could probably spend a whole program talking about any one of them. I keep this in case I run out of things to talk about on current issues of the day, so this would be my default list. It's also a good sample of the kind of things that we pick up on here in Tall Tales. That's 1 through 24, and I also tell you that number 0 on the list is this one. Bob doesn't know what he's talking about. And 00, Bob still doesn't know what he's talking about. So you can always call in. And when Jose says, "Why are you calling in?" you can tell Jose, Bob doesn't know what he's talking about.
And I'll put you straight through.
Yeah, this is the kind of calls that Jose likes the best because he doesn't have to cross-examine the caller as to why he's calling in, right, Jose?
I encourage it.
Yeah. So that's the kind of list of issues that we talk about. And the list is not to suggest that there aren't plenty of other interesting questions or answers to take up every day. There are, and they can be addressed. Usually serious and sometimes humorous, Tall Tales will examine current events, government and politics, and occasionally drift into history, culture, religion, law, and once in a great, great while, but only very, very cautiously, rumors and gossips. Tall Tales is structured, but can entertain whatever callers want to discuss at any time. I just ask that you'll let me finish the issue that I'm dealing with. As an example, I like to get through Demi Ikotny before I start taking calls, and between issues on the card, you can call in and we can stray a little bit sometimes. Tall Tales is an issue-driven, fact-oriented, interactive talk show that invites audience participation. It has been rated top-rated FM. It is the top-rated FM afternoon show in Micronesia, as determined by the Statistics and Research Branch of the Tall Tales think tank.
That would be me.
Yeah. Facts and no-nos. Sayings like, they say, everybody knows that. We've always done it that way. There's no doubt in my mind. No! We don't do it that way on Tall Tales. We look for some analysis and critical thinking. Now, here's a caveat. Don't look for an abundance of common sense on Tall Tales. Your common sense is what tells you that the world is flat, that iron ships could never float, and that an object that is heavier than air could never fly. Well, of course, common sense is to be valued, but not when it is a synonym for reverence for the status quo or timidity. While an instant and firm grasp of the obvious may occasionally be necessary, sometimes it's good to delve into the theoretical and occasionally examine the, quote, what-ifs. Common sense, or call it common sense, if it is. Right, Tom? Let's argue without being argumentative. Let's disagree without being disagreeable. Let's not play pin the tail on the talk show host. Second caveat, look for provocative content on Tall Tales. Tall Tales thrives on disagreement. Tall Tales is an issue-driven interactive show that invites audience participation. It has been the top-rated afternoon show in Micronesia. Usa dos na lenguaje y fino English dan y fino tomorrow loque que programaho haik programata. Guaho ito nizo host dan butlon kasi frijón dan natzelik do. I hope. Tall Tales is the name, so look out for the tongue-in-cheek aspects of the show. And if there's a tongue-in-cheek aspect for the show, listen for Jose's horn. Attaboy, Jose. Sit back and enjoy Demi Ikotny, the boxing card, the big halftime show, the seventh inning stretch directly from Wrigley Field, and the home stretch from Churchill Downs. My job is to make the complex understandable and, if possible, interesting. Sometimes we comfort the afflictive, sometimes we afflict the comfortable. Tall Tales is interactive. No soapboxes allowed, no filibusters, and no pin the tail on the talk show host either. Your humble, self-effacing, ever-modest host. That's me, but it's kind of, I don't know why I have to explain that, right? Is supported by the Tall Tales think tank, to include the Tall Tales foreign policy guru, a constitutional law and organic expert, and a research survey and statistics bureau, and now a script writer for the 19th floor. So that's the rules of engagement. I'll read that at the first of every month because, you know, we have new people tuning in and they don't quite understand, might not understand some of the intricacies of Tall Tales.
It's a rather good public service announcement.
I believe it. I believe it is, yes. Everything you wanted to know about Tall Tales, but didn't know who to ask. Okay, let's go to Zemi Ikotny. Zemi Ikotny is my backwards play on words. Backwards bilingual play on words. Actually, if you translated it literally, it means press the meat. We turn it around so that it means meet the press. I suspect Chuck Todd monitors this program to see how it's really done, because we're so much better than Chuck Todd here. Okay, today we've got dueling editorials. We start out with the Daily News. Now, Zemi Ikotny, I go through each of the editorials. I evaluate them. I keep my blue pencil handy, and when I find mistakes in English usage, grammar, or faulty editorial theories, I mark them down. When I finished both, I will give the more meritorious of the two the coveted blue star, which never goes by default, by the way. So the Daily News today says, our view, RISE Act measure fiscally irresponsible, politics at its worst. Well, I agree with the headline, but it must have been a headline for a different editorial. What began as an attempt to financially help Guam residents struggling in the midst of Wuhan virus pandemic has morphed into a political power struggle between the governor and the legislature. In December 2020, lawmakers passed the Respond, Innovate, Succeed, and Empower, or RISE Act, to give those who made less than $40,000 a payment of $800 and $1,600 to joint filers who made less than $80,000. It was passed in a time when it wasn't clear if the federal government would provide additional financial support to citizens. But the Trump administration gave a second round of economic impact, $600 for singles, $1,200 for married couples filing a joint return, plus $600 for each qualifying child. Then President Biden's American Rescue Plan included $1,400 to individuals, with partial payments to those earning up to $80,000. Those with dependents also received $1,400 per dependent. The RISE Act should have been repealed when the federal money came through. I can agree with that. But that sensible action wouldn't have helped elected officials at the polls next year during elections. Governor Lou Leon Guerrero signed an executive order in May implementing the All Rise program, including government workers, and setting a cap of $30 million to be paid on a first-come, first-served basis. Tuesday night, senators overrode a veto of Bill 75, which would increase RISE Act payments and remove the cap. They passed the original act with no idea of how much it would cost. No idea. Now, from the standpoint of English usage, here's a good phrase to never use. What time is it? I have no idea. So it could be midnight, huh? No, it's still late. Well, why are you telling me you have no idea? And I hear that drifting out of people's mouths, So I think they had some idea. They knew it wouldn't cost $1 billion, right? And they knew it would cost more than $100, so they had some idea. There's no identified funding source. The measure directs the governor to find the money, ostensibly using American Rescue Plan funds. This is complete fiscal irresponsibility. The senators who voted to override this legislation should be embarrassed and ashamed. So, Mary Torres, you have a fan here. The only one who didn't vote to override that veto. They have chosen to make themselves out to be champions of the people so they can proclaim themselves as heroes, when their campaigns go into full swing next year. This is the worst form of politics. Tai Mamatlo. Jose, Tai Mamatlo means without shame. Well, I see it just a little bit differently than this. Yeah, I see a governor who was playing the game that she accuses the legislators of. Not that I'm going to let them off the hook either. She accuses them of playing that game. And the governor's game plan was a little different. The legislature came up with a plan to give people money, $30 million, to veto a bill that would put money in people's pockets. May not be politically very astute. If I were to grab my political prism, remember when I look through my political prism at an issue, it filters out morality, legality, kindness, good manners, bad manners, ethics, and leaves only political considerations behind. So as a general rule, politically speaking, giving money to people is good politics, when good politics means it's going to help you get reelected. So the governor could have vetoed that bill right off the bat, but she didn't want it said, when the legislature wanted to give, the folks, not rich people, but middle class and poor people, she wanted to give them some money. The legislature wanted to give them some money, but the governor vetoed it. Not too good. So she said she found an excuse. She said, I'm going to let it become law without my signature, which is kind of like a senator sitting on his chair and not voting, passing 3 times and then not voting, because the effect is exactly the same, but there's a little theatrics involved that might fool some of the governor really didn't like it, so she didn't sign it. She just let it become law without her signature. Same effect. And then, not letting that sleeping dog lie, she said she constantly, Jim Moylan wrote her a letter. Was it every day or every other day? I can't remember. It seemed like every day. When are you going to release the RISE Act funds? When are you going to release the RISE Act funds? And the governor turned a deaf ear to all, I can't say that. The governor enacted a role as though she had a hearing impairment every time this message was conveyed to her. And then finally decided they're still getting too much good press out of this. Even Jim Moylan gets press with his letters. So I got to come up with my own program. So I'm going to do a play on words. They called theirs the RISE Act. I'm going to call mine the All Rise Act. Very clever. But not act, because she doesn't enact laws. She only does executive orders. So she calls it the All Rise Program. And one of the raison d'etre for the All Rise Program was that the All Rise Act cut government employees out of the largesse. And she thought this was terribly unfair. And I think it's terribly unfair to include them. And I think everybody who's thought about it thinks it's terribly unfair. So she came out with her All Rise program, and she took the same dollar figures, $800 for people under 40, $1,600 for couples under $80,000. But it was her program. It wasn't theirs. And then she drew up all kinds of silly rules for people to apply. And she said, I'm keeping the $30 million, because that came from the legislature, still trying to stick it to the legislature. When that's gone, it's gone. You know, first come, first served. And then she made it really difficult to get your application. First, you had to go to the mayor's office and get a verification of residence. Then later on, she decided, well, you really don't need that at all. And then the next thing was, well, you have to have filed an income tax return, and it has to have been processed by the Rev Tax folks. Well, some people didn't file on April 15. I don't think I did this year because the deadline was extended to May 15. And if you, as a general principle, if the later you can file, usually the better off you are. So she said if it wasn't processed, you can't get this all-rise money. And they haven't processed tax returns beyond May the 4th. So she cut a lot of people out just at the very beginning. And then one of the criteria is that you must have filed an income tax return, which for most people is not a problem. The late filing, of course, would have cut some people out. But there are a lot of people on this island that don't have to file tax returns because their income is so low. So the people who need the money the most, the people who are so poor that they don't even file income tax returns, got cut out of it. But they could file their income tax now, but they're still cut out of it. Maybe the next time the governor decides to do something like this, they'd be eligible. So when the Daily News says fiscal irresponsible politics at its worst, and when it says tai mamatlo, I would amend that by saying tai mamatlo todui dos, both of them, or tai mamatlo, playing this game. Okay, I think the Post shows a little bit more perspicacity here than the Daily News did. And here's the Post. Funding limit for direct cash relief, all rise, must be revisited. I'm going to take a short break before I go into the Post editorial. Hang on.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
A homeowner's policy protects much more than just your house. It also protects you against claims from someone being hurt on your property. If a visitor is injured at your place, how much are you covered for? The smart thing to do is get the answer today.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
And now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Yeah, and here's the Post. Funding limit for direct cash relief, all rise, must be revisited. As thousands of Guamanians are aware, maybe even fear, the $30 million limit for the governor's economic relief program, All Rise, raises the specter that the program will not have enough funding for everyone who qualifies. The economic relief idea started in the legislature where a program called the Recovery, Income Support, and Empowerment Act, or RISE Act, was approved last year. The goal was to approve one-time cash assistance of about $800 for each person who qualifies, or $1,600 for a couple at a time when nearly 30,000 private sector workers were either unemployed or took pay cuts as the pandemic unfolded. The RISE Act became law in December 2020 without the governor's signature. Several months later, on August 12, the governor issued an executive order authorizing, under her All Rise program, direct cash assistance of $800 per qualified individual or $1,600 per qualified couple, mirroring the legislation she didn't sign into law. The catch under the governor's program is that applicants who apply for All Rise must sign a document that they can no longer apply for the program the legislature had authorized under the RISE Act. In her version of the direct cash aid program, the governor authorized the inclusion of Government of Guam employees, Government of Guam retirees, as well as federal employees and retirees. This widened the pool of beneficiaries by thousands of people without raising the amount of money available. The result? When the application period ended Wednesday, nearly 17,000 people rushed to apply online or via drive-through or walk-in services at the Department of Rev Tax. One of the major reasons for the dash to file is that the administration's guidelines clearly state there is no guarantee everyone who qualifies will be paid. Payments, quote, payments are not guaranteed. Applications for eligible individuals must be filed with their respective Forms 8821. Because applications are processed on a first-in, first-out basis, once the $30 million cap for cash assistance program is reached, applications will no longer be accepted by DRT and payments will cease. DRT will advise once this cap is reached, according to frequently asked questions provided in the administration's recent All Rise guidelines. The Leon Guerrero Tenorio administration is using $30 million in federal funds for this program. There's no reason why it would limit itself to this cap, even after having expanded the eligibility by thousands of people. And I'll tell you why there's no reason for that. And that's this. The governor has repeatedly told us that money that comes from the national government, from these different congressional plans, pursuant to the rule in Wong versus Kamina, are hers and hers alone. She can spend them without any interference or interaction, I should say, with the legislature at all. So she decided in the beginning she was going to do it. She was going to dole out $30 million, and when all the applications were in, there were still 100 people that hadn't gotten their checks. She could say, "I'm going to increase this by $8,000." There's nothing stopping her. It's just a few strokes of the pen. The lines at RevTax Wednesday morning reflect the level of concern they have that the program will run out of cash. There's also a great number of people in our community who desperately need this help. As the federally funded unemployment program ends on September 4, and the cost of power, gasoline, food, rent, and other necessities keeps moving further out of reach for many. It's a sad moment on Guam to see people who have physical disabilities wait in line. Yeah, yesterday's card. Ed Santos, disabled veteran, sleeps in parking lot to beat the line for economic aid. Ed Santos is 65 and wears prosthetics for a missing leg. Knowing that he couldn't stand for what would be hours in the long line for today's start of the filing for the All Rise Direct Financial Aid for qualified Guamanians who need help, the veteran who served in Iraq couldn't take his chances. On Tuesday night, Santos was in his car which is parked at the Guam Department of Revenue and Taxation, determined to be the first in line for economic aid. Now I got to go back to the Daily News editorial again here to help me deal with the Ed Santos situation. And it's right at the end of the Daily News editorial. Where is it here? Yeah. It's right at the end of the editorial. Tai Mamatlo. To put healthy, able-bodied people through this kind of routine, it kind of reminds me of one of the things that drill instructors in Marine Corps boot camp would do just to have a little fun with the recruits. And if a recruit platoon did something that the drill instructor didn't like, I'd hit the deck, 84. We'd be down the deck. Push-ups. Down, up, down, up, down, up. Do you idiots like to do push-ups? No, sir. Well, that's too bad because you're going to be doing push-ups all the rest of the time you're in boot camp. Time you learn to like them. We're going to do 20 more. Down, up, down, up. It's the same kind of mentality here. You want $800? Well, fine. First, I'm going to send you off to the mayor's offices. This is what we call in government a wild goose chase. After having been on the wild goose chase and not having come home with a goose, we're going to do another cluster fumble here to make your life a little bit more miserable. We're telling you that when it's first come, first served, so the people who are really interested in grabbing the money are going to be down at the rev tax at dark 30 in the morning to get in the line when it starts at 7. We couldn't figure out any other way of doing it. You want to know the reason we couldn't figure out any other way of doing it than that? Very easy. Because we didn't try. Yeah. The worst form of politics. Tai Mamatlo. Most people on Guam know the governor has the power to set aside more than $30 million because nearly $600 million has been provided by the federal government for federal pandemic relief. And prior to that, hundreds of $millions more was provided to GovGuam. And the governor has asserted the senators don't need to get involved in determining how federal pandemic funds are spent. At this rate, with more than 17,000 applications filed on day one, and some of the applications could be for joint income filers, the $30 million will be exhausted in just a few days, maybe before the week comes to an end. We hope the administration is tuned into the community's pulse. Well, I could make another sarcastic here, tuned into the community. I'm sure they're tuned into the community's pulse. Otherwise, how would you drain people dry? And about face on the funding cap and sacrificing Guam pandemic spending on non-essentials like golf carts to make additional all-rise funding a priority would be a good turn for AdLoop to take at this point. I agree. Where is my blue pencil here? Yeah, congratulations, Guam Daily Post. There it is. The Guam Daily Post got it today. But there's a little bit more to this story here. There's an article in the Daily News, payouts on unimplemented RISE Act, now $1,000. The legislature late Tuesday night voted to override the governor's veto of one bill amending the RISE Act which increases the payouts to the Act to $1,000 and removes the $30 million cap on funding. The Legislature RISE Act is separate from Governor Julian Guerrero's All Rise program, which residents on Wednesday flooded the Department of Rev Tax Barragata branch and online portal to avail. The RISE Act lapsed into law last December without the governor's signature. While the All Rise program expanded eligibility of the original program to government and employees who were originally left out, the decision did not increase its cap on funding, resulting in a first-come, first-served program. The governor has contended that the money should be sufficient. Some 13 members of the legislature voted to override the veto of the bill, with only Senator Mary Camacho Torres voting against the move. An override vote was held Tuesday on Therese Terlahi's bill that failed. This $30 million cap in the first-come, first-served process has been causing anxiety in our community because there are many in great need of this assistance at the time, Speaker Terlahi said during Tuesday's session, adding that the governor could amend All Rise at any time to address this. She stated that cars had already begun lining up Tuesday night outside Rev Tax. The speaker said that amending the RISE Act wouldn't interfere with the government's program, but would provide another way for people who miss out on the program to get relief. Before the vote on Bill 75, author Jim Moylan acknowledged that overriding the bill may not do much to force the governor's hand. Quote, but what it will do is simply send a strong statement, a statement to the executive branch that the legislative branch is a co-equal branch of the government and want to work with the governor in redressing economic recovery. Yeah, it will also send a strong message to the voters that they should vote for Republican senators instead of Democrat governors. No qualified resident who applied on time should be denied proceeds from the act, he said. And then one more thing here. I can see I got some folks lining up at the green room. I suppose they're probably out there in the green room at the door to the green room at 3 o'clock, right? Wanting to be first in line. The governor has expressed herself here. She wrote a letter. She responded to letters from Senators Taitagui and Ada.
Not Moylan?
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I think she did, but I didn't pay any attention to it. Dear Senators, I am in receipt of your letters concerning the All Rise program. The entire Department of Rev Tax Familia and other GovGuam employees sacrifice so much to implement a program that provides direct cash relief to our residents. How did the Rev Tax Familia sacrifice? How did they sacrifice? They came to work on the job that they get paid to do. Governor, this is not called a sacrifice. It's like this people saying, I spent my whole life in public service. What did you do? Well, I was a government of Guam employee. Did you get paid? Yeah. Well, then it really wasn't a service, was it? It was your job. Well, I call it public service. Yeah. And then she goes on to say, I am pleased that all technical issues were resolved. I suspect that people that got caught up in the cluster fumble aren't as pleased as she is. As in any instance, we always strive to improve. As of today, 3,300 applications were received in person and 13,888 applications were received online. A monumental step toward the use of technology. Monumental? Having 3,300 people stand in line is a monumental step. And everything I heard about going online, it just repleted the cluster fumble. The system crashed like 2 seconds after 7. and a lot of people had all kinds of problems getting in. A monumental step toward the use of technology and, more importantly, mitigating the spread of Wuhan virus in this heightened environment. My decision to implement the All Rise program by executive order, which included key provisions passed by the legislature, was executed in conformance with all applicable laws, rules, and regulations, fortunately because no procurement was involved. And while I have stood firm in the use of $30 million from the American Rescue Plan, my discretion on this amount takes into account the competing priorities of our entire community over the estimated period for which these funds have been given. Throughout the pandemic, my administration has successfully directed and implemented numerous programs that have provided direct relief to our people, especially to those who need it the most. The implementation of All Rise was no different. Thank you Thank you to the frontliners and employees who made this program possible. It's heartening to know that our community sees the good we are doing. We are united in our commitment to doing more for our people. Sinceramente, Lou Leon Guerrero. Yeah. So there it is, I'd say straight from the horse's mouth, except we all know where the horse is. The horse is dead, and his head is laying at the foot of Dr. Gwen's bed. All right, let's see who wants to get involved here, who's waiting in the green room. I've got Bistra, Mendiola, and Martinez. And Bistra Mendiola wants to talk about our love affair with the governor, and Martinez wants to talk about the All Rise Act. Okay, I think it's about time that we take a break. Coming back from the break, we'll go to Bistra.
Mezcla, read all about it. Check out Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Tucumán for lunch. Serving up some savory seafood specials such as spicy garlic shrimp, candied salmon, or better yet, the local favorite, snapper or shrimp escabeche. Available only during lunch hours. Make sure to come down and try these tasty specials and more. Call 969-2652 for more info or to make a reservation. Located at the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tucumán, Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. A true taste of Guam.
Here at Guam Auto Spot, we have the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars. Like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage. As low as $127 per paycheck, 0 down. Or this 2021 Buick Encore. As low as $237 per paycheck, 0 down for 72 months. Call 478-AUTO to schedule a test drive or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com.
So here we go, starting out with Bistra. Bistra, I'm familiar with the term bistro.
That was so hilarious. Half a day, Bob. I was laughing here because you said my name and then later on you ran a ad for Mezcla Bistro.
So as I understand it, a bistro, I think, is a French word, and it's a place where food and drink are served. If that's a bistro, then bistro would be the feminine of that word, right?
That's what I kind of try to explain to folks who have difficulty pronouncing my name. I always point them to that word first, and then I explain that in my language, actually, it means Claire.
It means Claire?
Claire, yeah. Bistra means clear water.
Oh.
Like that's the quality, the purity.
What,
so anyways, what I wanted to...
What language would that be, Bistra?
Oh, that would be Bulgarian.
Bulgarian?
Yes.
You know, I'm probably one of the few people on this island that have ever been to Bulgaria.
You know, that there's very few people who even know Bulgarian, so I'm not surprised.
Yeah. Yeah, I was there. I wasn't in Sofia, and I caught a Danube cruise from.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was, and what I saw, I really liked. I wonder, what brought you to Guam from Bulgaria?
Work.
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 You're probably a nurse, huh?
No, I'm not. Currently I'm a small business owner, but I was in entertainment for a very long time. I actually came to work for the Sandcastle long ago, back in '99, and of course I had an office affair, and thus I stayed.
You're a very interesting person, but of course I shouldn't be surprised you've called Tall Tales, right?
Of course, only us interesting people call you, Bob.
There you go. So you wanted to talk about your love affair with the governor. Go ahead.
Oh, gosh, isn't it getting better and better? So what I wanted to point out today is something regarding her EO 2021-20, you know, the one refined vaccination requirement for all establishments.
Yeah.
Who must require staff and patrons to show proof that they're vaccinated to enter and use their facilities. That one.
Yeah.
So what I actually found after a little digging is I do believe that this actually contradicts another paragraph in the same law that she kind of loves to, cite constantly, the Title 10 GCA Health and Safety. So paragraph 19607 says that access actually relates to the access to and disclosure of protected health information. And in the access portion, it specifically says that health information shall be limited to those persons having a legitimate need to acquire or use the information to perform specific things here. Number one, provide treatment to the individual who is the subject of the health information. Number two, to conduct epidemiologic research or to investigate the causes of transmission. And this is the access portion. Now, disclosure. This disclosure shall not be disclosed to others without individual written, specific, informed consent, except for disclosure made to directly the individual's immediate family, the appropriate federal agencies, pursuant to a court order to avert a clear danger to an individual or to public health, or to identify a deceased individual. So correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding here that this EO kind of doesn't go in line with the other rules and regulations of the same act.
Sounds right to me, Bistra. And there's only one thing wrong here with what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
It's that I didn't say it myself. I'm supposed to be the legal whiz here, but I think you're absolutely right. I'm going to look that up, and I'm going to incorporate that into my rap. Good going.
Yes, thank you. Well, I'm not a lawyer. I did attend 3 years in law school, so maybe that's where we have something in common here.
Okay, well, and one of my friends just sent me a note, a tailgater from Bulgaria, but of course it is an international radio listening audience, isn't it? So glad you called in today, Bistra, and I hope you call in again. You were a treasure today with that little bit of information you shared with us.
I'm happy, and actually I do plan on testifying tomorrow in front of legislature regarding this because me as a business owner and an individual, I personally don't believe that I should be asking people what is their vax status. It's not my business, and I cannot enforce that on any of my employees, and I believe personally this is very wrong and as we see, quite unlawful.
Would you like to PR your business a little bit as long as you're here?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I will be opening very soon. I am involved in custom cosmetics, and I will be at the Agana Shopping Center Marketplace too, possibly next week.
Okay.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And the name of your store is going to be?
Liti. Liti in Chamorro means to mix, to mort. So it is actually a Chamorro word. Although I'm from Bulgaria, I do appreciate the island that I made home a long time ago, and I wanted to give back.
Okay, well, very good. Well, thanks a lot for calling, Bistra. Very interesting call.
Thank you so much, Bob. You have a great show.
Thank you very much. And let's see, I got to check here. I think Martinez is on 3. We're close to the big halftime show, Martinez. And I'm
ready to go, Senator?
And I've got another Joe. Another Joe, you may have to wait until after the halftime show. So go ahead, Martinez.
Senator, two-time director, lieutenant colonel, talk show host, cable TV host, teacher, union organizer, businessman with a company, but most of all, legislative deal counsel, but most of all, private first class Bob Klitzkie. The greatest thing. I'm proud of you. I'll make it quick. A number of years ago, the Philippines won the Little League World Series. I always watched it. You know, they beat the U.S. team in the final. They were disqualified for double cheating, overage players, and you only get players in a region. Like Guam doesn't send a team representing Guam. It's usually just the Central. And they had a young, charismatic, maybe 34-year-old, experienced reporter, editor of a major station. And he got on and did an editorial and said the will to win was so great that it was good to cheat. And he lost his job and never covered. The will for Lulian Guerrero to get, and I take this personal, to get reelected is not only does she want to cheat, she wants thousands of people to commit a crime by lying. She's well educated enough to go into her background. She knows that you have to be negatively affected. So there's going to be at least 17,000 people that are going to lie. Not that there's many people more honest than me that won't do it. I need that $1,000. I need it bad. You know, I'm ready to lose my studio. But I can't lie, and others will lie. And I called up Reverend Tax. I finally got in Monday. The employee was very cooperative. He said, fill it out. Fill it out. Everybody's going to get it. You know they're not going to audit. But she wants the votes. Right away, the votes. And they're not going to get it. The person to blame here is that director, Daphne Simizu. We've had 2 directors resign. Now, I know people say they retired. I think it was the second term of Eddie Jerome Bazacar, the legislature changed the law, and there's nothing wrong with it, that if you're a director and maybe a deputy director, you can both serve. You can't enhance, but you can both retire and receive your director deputy pay. And I think it's that we did. And you know, one of them was a good director, but there was this question about did she sign something or not, and she had to go against her governor as another one, and that's principle. It's like Jerry Tierhorse. The greatest thing a reporter can do is become the press secretary to the President of the United States. Jerry Tierhorse, I think that was his name, became a reporter. Photographer became the press secretary to Gerald Ford. He only lasted 1 week or 10 days because when Ford pardoned Nixon, he said there's a principle involved here, I won't do it. Now, Tony Blair is one of the greatest statesmen I've known. And one of the things he said when he campaigned in 1992 and he won for prime minister, he says, we in government as officials, especially as elected officials, we got the ability to make life better for everybody, but sometimes we have to have courage. Where is your courage, Daphne? You know people are lying. You should tell your governor you can't do this. We got an opening. We got a gift from Mike Sinikas. We got the earned income tax credit. The last time we had that was when Jimmy Carter was president. That was so long ago. Now we're getting more. There's no strings attached. Take that money. I know St. Augustine wants to do it for a prison or thing and a hospital. That can wait. You take the 6 major typhoons that affected Guam from 1962 to 2002. This has done a lot more damage multiplied by 10 when it's done to lives. And people are going to lose their job. They need the money.
Mark.
This is emotional.
Mark.
Go on, Senator.
Yeah, it's the big halftime show. It's a hard.
I made my point.
Hard
Daphne,
break.
where's your conscience? Goodbye, Senator.
Thank you.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Tropical storm Misery. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Millions of people facing a challenging rush hour this morning. New York City is under a travel ban. Streets are flooded. The subway system is submerged and may not be in service this morning. All from the remnants of Hurricane Ida dropping more than 3 inches of rain an hour in the city.
I don't even know if it's possible for a city to be ready in the sense that a sewer system is just not going to be designed for that once-in-a-thousand-year storm or the collection of storms that equal this volume.
New York City Councilman Joe Borelli, the governors of New York and New Jersey have declared states of emergency. Parts of Passaic, New Jersey, reported to be under 5 feet of water. The mayor says a person drowned when their car was inundated with floodwaters. Louisiana's bayou may have been permanently changed by Ida's landfall earlier in the week.
Drone footage captures entire communities destroyed by the fury of Ida. The city of Grand Isle is now declared uninhabitable after taking the brunt of the Category 4 hurricane. Here in New Orleans, a few people remain optimistic as power slowly returns to some heavily damaged neighborhoods.
After going through so many storms, you get accustomed to it. You get accustomed to energy going out, the power going out.
Louisiana's governor is asking the 500,000 people who evacuated from his state to stay away until conditions improve.
Fox's Caroline Shively. In a 5-4 decision, the U.S. Supreme Court has refused to block enforcement of a law that's just been enacted in Texas, banning most abortions 6 weeks into a pregnancy.
The court's conservative majority ruled that abortion providers failed to make a case out of, quote, complex and novel procedural questions. Still, the court notes this is not a decision on the substantive issues and that the underlying case on the merits will proceed.
Fox's Sean Lanchel reports Chief Justice John Roberts voted with the minority. America is listening to Fox News.
Leah Dunca from Security Title here with a little information about trusts. A trust is a legal entity capable of owning property. It can protect property from issues such as lawsuits or divorce and can be used to distribute property and avoid probate. Many trusts start as revocable but become irrevocable when the initial trustees die. Work with your estate planning attorney to see if a trust is a good fit for your family property. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
America's top military brass says it's possible the U.S. could coordinate with the Taliban in Afghanistan in the future.
Chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, was asked at a news conference Wednesday if the U.S. might work with the Taliban to fight ISIS-K.
It's possible.
ISIS-K, a sworn enemy of the Taliban, also claimed credit for the suicide bombing last week that killed 13 U.S. forces in Kabul. As for working with the Taliban against ISIS-K, Milley says,
we don't know what the future of the Taliban is, but I can tell you from personal experience that this is a ruthless group from the past, and whether or not they change remains to be seen.
The U.S. has carried out 2 deadly drone strikes so far against ISIS-K targets inside of Taliban-held Afghanistan. In Washington, Jill Nato, Fox News.
Nearly 200 deaths in the U.S. Wednesday blamed on the coronavirus. Moderna now asking the Food and Drug Administration to approve a booster shot for their vaccine, which a new survey says many people are anxious for.
Most Americans who received at least 1 dose of a coronavirus vaccine are eager to roll up their sleeves again. According to a new Reuters Ipsos poll, 76% want booster shots, while 6% say they don't, and the rest remain unsure. The results of the survey indicate concerns over the highly contagious Delta variant is behind the desire for another jab. The U.S. government already made boosters available to immunocompromised people and plans to roll them out for the rest of the public starting September 20th, pending approval from health regulators. Some health experts believe the extra dose isn't necessary, citing data that shows fully vaccinated Americans have enough protection against hospitalization and death. Steve Rappaport, Fox News.
China's foreign minister has warned U.S. climate envoy John Kerry that deteriorating U.S.-China relations could undermine cooperation between the two on climate change. Wall Street mixed on Wednesday. The Dow dropped 48 points. NASDAQ gained 50. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
A homeowner's policy protects much more than just your house. It also protects you against claims from someone being hurt on your property. If a visitor is injured at your place, how much are you covered for? The smart thing to do is get the answer today.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Contact Express Financial for all your financial needs. Express Financial is consumer lending at its very best. They also have a host of dealer service programs with quick approvals. There are 3 ways to apply. Over the phone at 637-9834. You may visit their office in person at 600 Harmon Loop Road across the street from Costules. Or you can also visit their webpage and apply at myexpressfinancial.com. In most cases, you'll get your money the same day.
As we end Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, or PUA, on September 4th, the Guam Department of Labor is still committed to assisting you with your employment and unemployment needs. Call 311 to book an appointment for help with claim issues, appeals, and overpayments. For new applications, the deadline to apply is October 4th. Are you still trying to get back on your feet? Let GDOL and the American Job Center assist you by calling 475-7000 or 7001. Visit dol.guam.gov for more information.
So here we go. I'm a little delayed there. I have this wound on the side of my head and it started to bleed, but what the heck, the show must go on. So let's see. I got a couple folks in the green room here. I've got another Joe and Dr. Tom Poole. Another Joe wants to disagree with Bob sometimes. Where does he get off with that? And then Dr. Tom Poole wants to talk about Afghanistan. So since we haven't started the card yet, that's a good time to talk about Afghanistan. It's a good subject to talk about. Go for it, another Joe.
Hey, Bob. So earlier you were talking about your program being the premier program in Micronesia.
Yeah.
And I would suggest it's the premier program in all of the Western Pacific and Melanesia too, in U.S. program, premier U.S. program. But that's just my opinion.
Well, you're very persuasive, another Joe.
Yes, I have to disagree with you on that. And also, I'm not sure that we can legally use the term Micronesia anymore, Bob, because someone technically has ownership of that. They named their country the FSM, so technically they own that name now. I think they have the copyright and everything.
So that means that nobody can talk about the continent known as North America. Is that right, another Joe?
Canadians are not American, Bob.
And they're glad of it.
But anyway, having said that, you're saying to get time to talk about Afghanistan. You're implying, or because I got something to say about that. But someone was word of mouth. I was asking about this, and they said, all that military equipment, hundreds of millions, if not possibly billions of dollars of equipment that was left behind for the terrorists, just like they did in Iraq, Bob.
Yeah.
But he said no, that equipment was disabled. So I don't know how true that is. We need to get some fact checkers and determine, is it true? Is that equipment disabled, or can they still use it against American U.S. interests and our allies' interests? This is really, really, really upsetting that Biden has the nerve to blame everyone, barely taking responsibility by blaming everyone else, by not adapting to changing the buck stops with Biden last time I checked. So he should have been able to adapt, and if the people around him understood that he barely even knows where he is half the time, it seems, and he's
but give the guy a break. He knows which kind of flavor of ice cream he likes.
There you go, Kebab.
Yeah.
So we just need to keep this in mind the next election, and vote in a majority of Republicans in the Congress so that we can actually start asking real questions that need to be answered. Unfortunately, our allies, Bob, I don't think most of them are going to survive the next few months. So to be more expedient, I think there needs to be more attention to finding a way to save our allies because it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, like comparing to Saigon in was it 75 when they're evacuating everybody. Yeah, if you wait long enough, it'll be like that, and people will be killed. But I don't think we should be doing that. And also, these Muslim countries that are allies, Bob, they should think really carefully whether they want to let the Taliban take control again when they have a democratically elected government. The Afghan government, they should be evacuating all of the Afghan government that's not affiliated with the Taliban and establish their government outside of Afghanistan until they can return. But that's just my thought, and thanks for your time, and I'll keep listening.
Okay. I think we'll take a short time out here, Jose. I'm going to head for sick bay here for a minute, folks, and I'll be right back. Perhaps without the blood, but we'll see how it works.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Mescla, read all about it. Check out Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Tuman for lunch. Serving up some savory seafood specials such as spicy garlic shrimp, candied salmon, or better yet, the local favorite, snapper or shrimp escabeche. Available only during lunch hours. Make sure to come down and try these tasty specials and more. Call 969-2652 for more info or to make a reservation. Located at the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tuman, Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. A true taste of Guam.
Okay, so here I am. And thanks to Jose, who's not only the producer of the show, he's also the on-duty corpsman. So thank you, Jose. I think this will probably stop the bleeding until I get to the end of the show, but the show must go on, right? So I had Dr. Tom Poole on the line, right? Maybe you could, Dr. Tom Poole, you could call back. I think I can make it to the end of the show here without any problems. I was just wrapping up this whole RISE Act fiasco and taking the side of the Post in this, because I think the Daily News really missed the boat here, or the Daily News is in the pocket of the governor. Which would seem kind of strange since the new owner is Kaleo Moylan, a Republican former lieutenant governor of Guam. You wouldn't think he would be in a Democrat governor's pocket. But I made the point before that Gannett may be gone, but there are remnants of Gannett apparently still hanging on at the Daily News. All right, let's check out the card here and see what we've got today. I've got Ray versus Confusion, Civil Service Commission versus Gura, Therese versus Ethics Process, Doctors versus Teachers, Generals versus Millie and Austin, Anti-Vax Porn versus the U.S. Constitution. Yeah, that word porn gets people's attention. Oh, porn on tall tales. Yeah, I got to hear that. So I'm starting out with Ray versus Confusion. And, the governor has come up with this draconian order that says that if you're going to eat in a restaurant, you must either bring along your vaccination card or sign a declaration that you have had at least the first vaccination. And that the proprietor of the restaurant has to have these forms with the right boilerplate on the form and the signature blocks to sign under penalty of perjury. And the restaurant owner ultimately can be fined $10,000 for not complying with this law. Third offense is $10,000. Yeah. And every one of the people that go into that restaurant without the necessary vaccination is liable for a $100 fine. And I talked a little bit the other day about how this could be enforced. And obviously, we're not going to have a roving patrol of Vax card enforcers going around, but I pointed out how it's possible if somebody in the government wants to zap somebody, they could do it. The example I gave was, Bob is always talking about the governor, off with your head, the Red Queen, all that kind of stuff. We got to put a stop to that. What can we do? Well, we got this new law about vaccinations, and maybe he's not vaccinated. And I know he goes to Touray a lot. He's down there every Saturday morning. So let's send a couple of uniforms down there on Saturday morning, and if Bob's there, we'll check that roll, that paper, and if his name isn't on it, we'll ask him for the card, and if he doesn't have it, we'll cuff him, take him, book him, and release him. That'll show him. See what he says about that on his talk show. I'm not saying that would happen, but I'm saying that it could happen. Otherwise, the whole exercise seems like an exercise, like Martinez says, to prompt people to lie. People that don't want to get the vaccination, they want to go to a restaurant. So they fill out that paper and they sign it and they let it go at that. So today, the first item on the card is Touray versus confusion. Well, we wanted to go out for what I would term the Last Supper, because although the executive order was effective on Monday, the governor says she's not going to enforce it for 2 weeks, which makes it September 6th. So these draconian rules are not in place. They are in place, but they're not going to be enforced. So we checked with a couple of places that I like, or a place that I like, which is Olive Garden. And Olive Garden said, yeah, they're doing it. They're checking it. I'm bleeding again. Olive Garden said that they are checking, or they're verifying. Either you sign or you you show your card. So we're not going to go there. And then we tried the new Texas Steakhouse. What's it? Longhorn Steakhouse. Same thing. So obviously we're not going to go there. I checked with Touray. Oh yeah, you don't have to. We're not doing that stuff. We're not doing that yet. So we're going to go to Touray. So that's why I put this on the card as Touray versus confusion. I don't know if the place. Oh, and McDonald's. I went into McDonald's the other day to get something, and they've got a sign on the door there enforcing this rule right now. I would think that this is really at cross purposes with their businesses, because obviously they're losing business when they do this. They're losing business. They're losing the business of people that don't have the vaccine and don't feel like lying. And then they're losing business from people like me that aren't going to go there on principle. And I suspect there are more of them out there than what the restaurateurs understand. So Touray is a good place. It's good food. You got a porch. You can, ocean view, really good service, friendly people, etc. And they're customer-oriented enough to stay open instead of, this knee-jerk, whoa, Wuhan virus, we got to close. So that's why I put that on the card for today. Next item on the card is the Civil Service Commission versus GURA. And I'm looking at the last one of the last pages in the Post today, page 28. And there's announcement of 2 meetings. The Civil Service Commission is going to meet at 9 a.m. on September 7th, a Tuesday. It's going to be a Zoom meeting. And this is what they're going to discuss. First, approval of minutes, no. New business, motion hearing J. Lubasan versus DYA. Motion hearing JVC versus DYA. Motion hearing JVC Cruz 2 versus DOC. Motion hearing JR Seo versus PAG. Motion hearing TP Nangauta versus GWA. Old business, judgment of dismissal, K. Shimabukuro versus GMH, and adjournment. So they are in compliance with Public Law 3634. Then we have the Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority. GURA will hold its regular meeting, the Board of Commissioners, on Friday, September 10 at noon. This meeting is open to the public via Zoom, etc. The agenda may be viewed on our website. Now, the public law that I just mentioned has a pretty interesting enforcement mechanism. It doesn't require the Attorney General or somebody else to enforce it. What the public law says is that any meeting held for which the notice is not compliant with the section that says that the agenda must be published in the advertisement, and it must be of sufficient detail to put the public on notice as to what is to be discussed. If that requirement is not met, any action taken at the meeting is void. So if GURA approves a lot of leases or something like that, whatever it's done is void. Now this, of course, is a wonderful thing for lawyers, because when a lawyer gets stuck with a hopeless case on from one of these agencies, the first thing he's going to do is check the notice of the meeting, and if the notice is faulty, then the lawyer can go in and set it aside, just like that. So where is this devotion to transparency? And we have a governor. Governor, this is happening on your watch, and I don't think you're. I know you're aware of it because I read your signing message when you signed the bill, so you're obviously aware of it. But you didn't. You haven't called for your administration to comply with the law. Not a very good show. Okay, I got a couple more here in the green room, but I got a break for the second inning stretch, and then I've got drive-through Jack and Vince. So here we go. The seventh inning stretch, Wrigley Field in Chicago. I was walking around out there in the outfield, and who did I see up in the stands? I saw a drive-through Jack, and right behind him, drive-through Jack, who wants to talk about mandates and current news, and Vince, who has a criticism on Archbishop Burns' non-responses on mandatory vaccines. Yeah, interesting. Okay, first we'll go to Drive-Through Jack and then Vince. Go for it, Drive-Through Jack.
How you doing today, Bob? I hope you're doing well.
Not as well as I could be, obviously, if you happen to be watching. But go on.
Yeah, I'm on the road, but I could hear the description, and I know it wouldn't be serious, but I know it's serious because of the long. So I just hope you're doing well. But if I could maybe just make a comment about really what we're having here, I would just use the metaphor of when we talk about our liberties and about our freedom. I'll use the metaphor about the boiling frog.
Yeah.
And the metaphor goes something. Yeah, it goes like something like this. Like you throw the frog in the boiling water, it'll jump out. Of course, it's just a metaphor now. We're not talking about real science here. We're talking metaphor. It'll jump out because it'll know. But if you put the frog in a cool water and you slowly turn up the heat, the frog will not notice this, and it'll be very comfortable. And before you know it, the frog dies because it was boiled and didn't take the action of jumping out of the pot. So I look at that. That's what's going on with our liberties.
I want to share another. I want to share another analogy with you. This is the scorpion and the frog. And in this case, the frog is our economy, and I'll let you guess who the scorpion is. But the things are hazardous on one side of the river, and then everybody wants to get to the other side of the river. So obviously the frog can swim across the river. And the scorpion asked the frog if he can ride on the frog's back. The frog said, okay. So they get out to about the middle of the river, and the scorpion stings the frog and kills the frog, and they both drown.
Yeah.
The frog is our economy. So I'll let you figure out who the scorpion is. Can you figure that one out, Jack?
I think we could rest assured that it's the politics, the governor, of course, and of course the legislature in the part. Even, but let me just finish.
Go ahead, Jack.
Yeah. So I think that's what's going on with our liberties, and we're just you, myself, and Ray jumped out of that simmering pot, but we see our fellow citizens and we just don't understand why, and it begins to make sense. It's just comfortable. They're not working, they're getting paid. There's a lot of buy-in into what's going on with this Wuhan virus, and I need to emphasize that really our fight really at the core is with the Guam Pacific Daily News, because they have from the get-go, I use the words of Chief Ignacio, they have from the start have painted us in a corner, the unvaxxed. They have labeled us as hillbillies, baby killers, the same things that they won't print or make any reference of cartoons about the governor, our governor, being dressed up in swastikas and Nazi because it's offensive. The same newspaper will paint us, the unvaxxed, as baby killers and backward hillbillies. And so the enemy is the press here. The enemy is the way they do their so-called math and their statistics. I mean, just recently, just a day or two ago, they published that, back in December 2020, we found out that there were 2 more people that had died because of the Wuhan virus. Oh, by the way, they were unvaxxed. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Bob. The vaccination didn't come to Guam till 2021. So, of course, they would be unvaxxed, but they had to mention that to pad their statistics to make it look like, the problem is here is the unvaxxed. And they make laws and first they do things to make the majority. Let's be honest. The unvaxxed are not voting for Lou Leon Guerrero, so she doesn't care what sort of burden it is that they put on them. So that's a given. Number 2 is because of this all rise stuff, the simplistic thing she could have done was, pass another bill or pass an executive order covering the GovGuam employees. But what she wanted to do, and the bottom line is she wanted that GRT 6% increase to be forever. So how else do you do that? How else you make sure that 6% doesn't go away? Just like this Wuhan virus, she wants it forever. She wants things forever. I think that's the 3-syllable word that she's used to right now. And I'm sorry, but I watched her interview this morning, and at first I was angry, then I felt I felt sympathetic for her, because it's almost like I'm watching a Manchurian Candidate type of scenario, unfolding. She's so glancing on the left. There's frequent cuts through the interview. That's it.
Jack, that's very interesting. This explains the whole Red Queen phenomenon, doesn't it?
Well, plus, you got people from her cabinet like
Jack.
Sure.
The Manchurian Candidate, if you'll recall, is one of the most dramatic movies ever made. They captured these soldiers in Korea and they took them to a Chinese brainwashing camp, and they brainwashed the officer, the lieutenant, and they programmed him, and he would if he saw the Queen of Diamonds, when he would show him a Queen of Diamonds, and he would do whatever you told him to do. He killed his girlfriend's father, for example. And the way that they would bring him around to that state was by saying, Raymond, why don't you play a little solitaire for relaxation? He'd start playing solitaire. When he got to the Red Queen, he was programmable. So, good call, Jack. Manchurian Candidate. That was really astute on your part.
But I used, it was really a book, and then, of course, Frank Sinatra played a great part. Denzel Washington also played a great part. But I use these references just to try to reach the millennials, because if you try to use book references, it's totally lost upon them. So, but in regards to what's going on right now, and you see there's something off a little bit about her, and, you could say the same about Joe Biden. The sad part, the people are messaging me, sending me memes about him kneeling during George Floyd, and then him looking at his watch as the fallen soldiers, the 13 fallen soldiers went past him. And also Gold Star families being banned on social media for expressing what they felt about what went on. So there's a lot of things that are going on, and we need to put the blame where the blame fits, and it is on Guam PDN. And so we need to focus what our next moves is. I don't think protesting at the governor's or even protesting at the legislature does any good, because where it all comes from is they all hunger for attention, and the best attention grabber here is the Guam PDN. So I think if we really want change to be done, and we really want people to recognize what is true and what is real out there, I think the focus needs to be on the PDN, because they have done a lot of harm to this island during this fight with the Wuhan virus, and help that they have, or any help that they've done. I
got you, Jack. I got your point.
All right.
So,
well, Bob, so you have a great day, rest of the day, and be careful.
Thank you, Jack. Okay, so let's see. We got about 5 minutes more before. Why don't we go to Churchill? Why don't we go to Churchill Downs now, and then I'll entertain Vince.
Here at Guam Auto Spot, we have the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars, like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage, as low as $127 per paycheck, 0 down. Or this 2021 Buick Encore, as low as $237 per paycheck, 0 down for 72 months. Call 478-AUTO to schedule a test drive or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
So here we are, Churchill Downs in Louisville, heading down the home stretch of Tall Tales today. And Vince wants to talk to us about the Archbishop and vaccine. So go ahead, Vince.
Hi, good afternoon, Bob. Yeah, no, I mean, I just have one comment to make is I see, and I hear a lot of criticisms for a lot of leaders on the island, the senators, the governor, even business owners, the press, but someone who's been escaping a lot of criticism, and I think that's unfair, is the Archbishop. He's supposed to be the spiritual and moral leader. We haven't heard from him, and not too many people are criticizing him on the show. And from what I understand is, the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, the teaching office of the church, has released a document saying that people are not to be forced to be vaccinated. So, this is something that I think we need to bring attention to, and people should know that, the Archbishop's supposed to be fighting for them too.
I agree, and I thought the Archbishop let us all down, all along the way here when the Director of Public Health and Social Services said that she would not allow churches to celebrate the sacraments. That was too much. The Archbishop should have come out at that time when that same person classified churches as non-essential. He should have come out and said, we're not essential, we're not non-essential, we're the church. And don't forget it. But I'm afraid, and also the Archbishop cooperated with the governor on this whole testing and vaccination thing. So I'm afraid that the Archbishop is more interested in being a, quote, nice guy than he is in carrying out his duties as the spiritual leader of Catholics on this island. Vince?
Yeah, right. And, that's a shame because, there's actual faithful out there who have real objections of conscience. And, he's just going to stand by silently when it's his job to take the lead.
Good point, Vince. Good point.
Okay, thank you, Bob.
Thanks for sharing that with us.
I hope you get better soon.
I can't get any worse. I'll be fine. Thanks, Vince.
Yeah, the last announcement or pastoral message on vaccines, I believe, came out in March of this year, and haven't had anything updated from then. But what he did say was, while he has received the vaccine, and this is a quote, he simultaneously, I respect those who, for any reason, be it medical, safety, or moral, are unable or unwilling to receive the vaccine. Now, in light of this mandate, there hasn't been anything else, I don't think, coming from the Chancery on mandates and what do they call it, religious exemptions, and how they're going to handle that.
Yeah. Yes, that's a good point. I probably ought to start putting the bishop on the card just routinely, huh? Okay, I got an interesting post here from Thomas Hurslett. He said, I believe drive-through Jack has a point. He says it's not only the PDN, it is the point as well. I think he means the post, not the point, right? Post as well. Neither editors proofread their reporters' reports. Journalists at its poorest standard. Well, that's why I have this, and that's why when I see stuff like that, I point it out. Helen Widger Middlebrook, not the point, the post. And yes, the post editors do read some copy that goes across their desks. They've censored me more than once. Helen's a good columnist. They censor her more than once.
A voice of reason.
And where were they on the 5th of July when they ran that horrible anti-American editorial? Good point. Okay, so next item on the card is Therese versus the ethics process. Speaker, Ethics Committee to determine whether complaint was formal. Speaker Therese Terlahi deferred to the legislature's Ethics Committee on whether a complaint made against Tello Taitigui was ever submitted formally. A man who identified himself as Joseph Cruz. That couldn't be the real Joe Cruz, could it, Jose?
No, I don't think so.
No, if it were the real Joe Cruz, he'd tell you. Yeah. Joseph F. Cruz emailed the Pacific Daily News and Speaker Therese Terlahi April 12, alleging Taitigui had received a kickback in the form of a high-end purse during her time as Deputy General Manager of the Guam Visitors Bureau under the Calvo administration, among other things. Terlahi responded that day, stating it was her preliminary determination that the complaint wasn't a formal complaint under the legislature's rules. A formal complaint.
What is that?
Black tie, tails, top hat. Yeah.
You look like the Monopoly man.
Yeah. And then the article goes on to say formal complaints must be handwritten. Handwritten.
Okay.
Yeah, turn on the, let's have the Law and Order notebooks. Yeah, so the only other place in the law that I know where something needs to be handwritten to be effective is what's called holographic wills. Guam recognizes a holographic will. If the entire will is in the handwriting of the testator, the person before who's willing his property, and signed by the testator, it's good. And they need to be witnessed. Holographic will. But if any part of it is typed, or if anybody else does any of the writing, then it's no good. So, and of course, holographic wills aren't used very often because most people, wills are extremely dangerous because they're really traps for the unwary. And it's one of the few things that you do in your lifetime that you never really know if it works or not. So, and I would discourage anybody who thinks it's a good idea. But that's the only time I ever heard of it. But here at the legislature, we must have a holographic complaint. In this era of word processing, you know, the word processor has really changed public participation, because before that came along, there were times I wanted to write a letter to the editor. But I took typing in high school, and I got up to about 30 words a minute and about 30 errors a page.
By that time, the issue was already over.
Yeah, right. So if I were gonna type a letter, it would take me from now until the end of time just to get the first page in paper. But now, with the word processing, anybody can do it. And I would think that would encourage it, because it's much easier to read what I type than it is what I write. And that's the reason, of course, I didn't go to medical school, right? So the article says, formal complaints must be handwritten and signed.
And delivered by Pony Express.
Yeah. Or you could fold it up, put it in a bottle, and toss it in the ocean and hope that it got to the legislature. Formal complaints must be handwritten and signed, and the complainant has to swear to believing them to be true under penalty of perjury.
Is she citing a statute?
Well, and that's how you do it. Yeah, there is a statute in the evidence code that says that a declaration under penalty of perjury is the same thing as subscribed and sworn before a notary public. So you want it handwritten, but you want the person who's doing it to handwrite something that most people really wouldn't know how to start with, right? The declaration under penalty of perjury. Does this make it easier or harder to file complaints? Second question, would it seem like the legislature would want to make it easier or harder to file a complaint? Let's make it hard, right? Let's see how many needles people are going to have to thread, how many hoofs are going to have to jump through before this will work. And then it says, all documents related to ethics complaints received by my office have been forwarded to the Ethics Committee for their review and determination if a formal complaint has been filed pursuant to the standing rules, the Speaker said. Cruz didn't respond to the Daily News' request for verification of his complaint as of Thursday. So, great story. What's it about? Yeah.
The newspaper wasn't validated.
It was, from now on.
That's what it was.
From now on, the editorials must be handwritten, and they must have the declaration under penalty of perjury at the bottom. Okay, next item on the card is a long one. Yeah, I can get into it. It's called Doctors versus Teaching. And this ran on my favorite columnist, not Jeffrey Toobin, who I used to really like as a writer. He's liberal. He's on the left, but he's a good writer and he's a good lawyer, and I used to really like reading his stuff. But nowadays, not so much.
Well, he overextended the use of his hands.
Yeah, you got to hand it to the guy, right? And here's what Turley said. Thousands of doctors and health professionals sue the Biden administration over new gender transition policy. There's an interesting constitutional challenge brewing in Tennessee where 3,000 physicians and healthcare professionals are suing the Biden administration over the mandate for doctors to perform gender transition procedures. One of the first changes ordered by the Biden administration was redefine the discrimination laws to include the denial of such gender transition procedures. In other words, if Herman comes in and says he wants to be Henrietta and he wants you to modify his plumbing, if you say, I don't want to do it because, that's gender discrimination. The case could force the courts to address a direct conflict between anti-discrimination laws and religious values, a medical version of cases like the Masterpiece Cake Shop, which was the Buddy Cake Shop in Colorado. You remember that one? The defendants include the Department of Health and Human Services, the Office of Civil Rights, including Javier Becerra, the Secretary of HHS, and Robin Sue Frobasi. Robin Sue. I wonder if she might be well, never mind. Acting Director and Principal Deputy of the Office of Civil Rights for the HHS. Section 1557 of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, better known as Obamacare, provide that an individual shall not be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination on the grounds prohibited under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. One of the earliest acts of President Biden was to sign an executive order upon entering office that required Section 1557 and Title IX to be interpreted to include gender identity as a protected trait. Gender identity. Yeah. So, you remember how this works. Bruce Jenner was born with male plumbing. He was an Olympic athlete, somebody that everyone looked up to, but then he decided that he really didn't want to be a man anymore. He wanted to be a woman. Now, I don't know if there was any modification of plumbing, but he now calls himself Caitlyn Jenner. No, Caitlyn Jenner. But I think I'm going to start calling him Caitlyn Jenner. That'll be his tall tales name from now on. Yeah, and so if you were to, discriminate against Caitlyn because you remember Bruce Jenner and you were a real Bruce Jenner fan and you thought he did so well in the Olympics and you feel like he kind of double-crossed you with his Caitlyn stuff, that could get you in trouble. Yeah. If Caitlyn hasn't had the plumbing modification and they go to a doctor and tell the doctor, you're a surgeon, right? So I'm tired of being a man. I want to be a woman. And the doctor says, I'm sorry, Caitlyn, I can't do that for you. I have religious scruples that I can show you, trace it back to the Bible that won't allow me to do that. Well, I'll see you in court, Doc. That's the way it would go. These medical experts challenge the government's authority to effectively order them to perform gender transition procedures, prescribe hormones, or puberty blockers. Additionally, they claim the Biden administration is forcing them to conform their speech to gender identity rather than biological sex, regardless of their medical judgment or conscientious objections. Now, that's pretty interesting. If your specialty is OBGYN and Caitlyn comes in and says, Doc, I want you to treat me here. I've got some female problems. And the doctor starts the examination. Hey, wait a minute. You're not a female, Bruce. And I'll pick this back up tomorrow. And tomorrow I'm going to come in here and do something that I wasn't able to do today. I'm not going to bleed for tall tales. See you tomorrow.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
What's left of Ida pummels the Northeast. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Heavy rain from what is now post-tropical cyclone Ida pounding New York City, New Jersey, and parts of the New England states. Much of the New York City subway system shut down because of flooding. Several major streets are underwater. Most commuter rail services down. City of New York banning all but emergency travel at least until the morning rush hour. In Passaic, New Jersey, a man drowned when his car sank in floodwaters. In Kearney, New Jersey, part of the roof has collapsed at a post office mail sorting facility. At least 6 people have been injured. In the aftermath of Hurricane Ida's landfall along the Gulf Coast, residents are being asked to be patient.
Countless communities along the Gulf Coast and further inland face days, weeks, and months of rebuilding. On the barrier island of Grand Isle, around half the homes were destroyed by Hurricane Ida.
In my neighborhood, I lost my home. My grandson lost his home. I have a deputy that lost his home.
In New Orleans, officials know they are in a race to restore services to the half of the population that decided not to evacuate. With paramedics, firefighters, and EMT responding to call volumes 185% above normal, the dusk to dawn curfew will remain in place until further notice.
Fox's Mike Tobin, and there's another. Tropical storm Larry is expected to reach hurricane strength sometime today. Forecasters say could become a major hurricane on Friday. The U.S. Supreme Court has refused to block a new law in Texas that bans most abortions 6 weeks into a pregnancy.
There had been an emergency request to the Supreme Court to put that Texas law on hold. By 5-4, the court will allow the Texas abortion law to continue, considered the most restrictive by most people in the country. They say they're not getting to the underlying merits of the case. There are challenges that are proceeding on the merits, but for now, 5-4, the court will not step in and block that law. The Texas abortion law remains in effect.
Fox's Shannon Bream. America is listening to Fox News.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network.
Hey, this is Trey Gowdy, host of the Trey Gowdy Podcast. Every Tuesday, you'll hear what's on my mind. Plus, every Thursday, there's a special bonus episode where we answer the questions that are on your mind. Make sure to spend your Tuesdays and Thursdays with Trey. Subscribe now at foxnewspodcast.com or wherever you download podcasts. Hope to see you.
America's listening